Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to update you on the unread books on my shelves. So I filmed a video about a year ago, I think I will link it, where I talked a little bit about my unread books. Not all of them, of course, because as you will see in a minute, there are a lot of them, but I kind of gave a count of how many books were on my shelves that I have not read, and then I pulled just like a subsampling to talk about. So I'm going to update you on the number. I am going to update you whether I read any of those books that I had talked about, and I'm also going to talk about plans for tackling my unread books. So we're going to start with an updated count. So last year there were 185 books that I had not read, and now it's at 165. So I got a decent chunk, 20 books that I either read or unhauled or DNF'd or whatever. And my goal for this year is to get down to 150 unread. So obviously that's doable because I did 20 last year, so I should be able to get a further 15. My plans for getting through some of these unread books is I am going to film a couple of vlogs this year tackling my physical shelves. So I don't know exactly what they'll look like, but there might be a couple of reading vlogs reading the oldest books on my shelf. I don't know exactly how I might want to go about it, but I am going to film a couple of vlogs because they kind of light the fire under me to get things read, because I really do like doing reading vlogs. So I think that will be a good motivator for me. So that's my plan for tackling some of this year, is to do a couple of reading vlogs. So now let's talk about whether or not I read anything that I had mentioned last year when I talked about my unread books. There are two categories specifically that I talked about that would make it seem like those would have been high priority for me to read. So I pulled 5 books that I said I was really excited to read. They were books that were just speaking to me that I wasn't sure why I haven't read yet. And those 5 books were The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, The Graveyard Book, Death on Earth, Silver Sparrow, and The Fifth Season. I'm not going to talk about the books, I did that last time, but those were the 5 books that I said I was excited to read. And I have read 0 of those books. I started Silver Sparrow. I got probably 25% of the way into it, and I DNF'd it, but I didn't unhaul it, and I'm not DNFing it forever. I think it was a matter of timing. I picked it up immediately after reading The Color Purple, and I just don't think that was fair to the book. I think I was so enamored with the writing and language in The Color Purple that Silver Sparrow just seemed way too simplistic in terms of writing style, so I DNF'd it. But yeah, I haven't read any of those books. The other category that I talked about were books that I was embarrassed I haven't read. So books that either based on the fact that they were, like, I don't know, classics, or they were things that are books that are really up my alley, or books that I've had for a long time, those types of things. One was The History of Middle Earth. So we have all of the history of Middle Earth. There's a lot of books. I love Tolkien. I love all of the like Middle Earth mythology and lore. And as someone who is a big fan of just the world of Middle Earth and its history, I was embarrassed that I hadn't read The History of Middle Earth. I don't know how many books there are in that series, but it's a lot, and when I get to them, it's going to be not something that I can just, you know, read in a year or anything. That's going to be a long-term project. But that was one of the things, was that I hadn't picked up any of those books. The other thing I was embarrassed I hadn't read was 6 Easy Pieces by Walter Mosley, and that's because it's just a genre that in the past I have really enjoyed, and I was so excited to read it when I bought it, and then it just sat on my shelf for years. East of Eden was another one by John Steinbeck, because I like John Steinbeck and I was embarrassed I haven't read one of his more famous books. The next was Jane Eyre, which I have read. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that video I made was 1.5 years ago, not a year ago. So I've had plenty of time. Anyway, I read Jane Eyre, really enjoyed it. And the other thing was that I hadn't continued on with the Discworld series because I had read the first 2 books eons ago and hadn't continued with it. And I was embarrassed that I hadn't because we own several of them. And I have now read the next in the series. I have read Equal Rights. So out of the 10 books I've just talked about, there were only 2. I have continued in Discworld and I have read Jane Eyre. As I mentioned, I'm hoping to do some vlogging. One vlog that I do want to make relatively soon, like in a couple months maybe, I'm thinking probably April, is I would like to tackle some of these unread books, but with your suggestions. I'm not going to talk about all of my unread books because there are 165 of them, but I would like to do kind of sort of a bookshelf tour, highlighting some general sections or authors or something, and getting you to comment below and say, yes, read this, yes, read that. I will film all of the shelves as well so that if you want to just pause and look at them, you can, because again, I don't want to go through all of them. So I will pan over all of them. I will highlight a few things, and I would love it if you commented below anything you see on my shelf that you think I should read next for that vlog. So the first shelf is nonfiction. The first section here is more of the like science nonfiction. And then we have some just random stuff in the middle, a lot of memoirs and biographies, a couple history things, and a couple like essay and poetry collections over here. So I'm going to highlight some things I've had for a long time without picking up. Working Stiff I've had for a while. What else? Also, there's a bunch of like ecology, evolution things I've had for a while. Moral Origins, Dinosaur in a Haystack, and Survival of the Nicest I've also had for a while. The next shelf is like general fiction, literary fiction. So I'll just give you a pan. I mean, I have read some of these, but I will highlight some that are piquing my interest. Remains of the Day, because I read Never Let Me Go last year and loved it, so I'd like to read another Ishiguro. Some other ones. Oh, an old coworker gave me this. Please Look After Mom. I've never heard anyone talk about it. Also, Roddy Doyle's Patty Clark, has been on my to-read list forever. There's also a lot of Palahniuk. There's some other Palahniuk books in like other like sections of my shelves, but my husband is a big Chuck Palahniuk fan. Well, he was. I don't know if he's really into him anymore, but he has, I think, almost all of his novels, so I might be interested in picking up Palahniuk. 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield is one I'm very interested in, and I haven't read any Emma Donoghue, so The Wonder also is piquing my interest. On the next shelf, I have a few different short story collections. I read Ted Chiang's other short story collection, Exhalation, so I would love to read Stories of Your Life and Others. I have one about AI. It's like a sci-fi collection. And over here we have some classics. The title font on some of these are quite small, so I'll try to get a good pan of them. I've read actually a fair few of these. I haven't read any of the E.M. Forster books that I have. I have Passage to India, Room with a View, The Longest Journey, and Morris. On the next shelf we have a few mystery and detective type stories. Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, 6 Easy Pieces, which I mentioned earlier. And then we have a bunch of sci-fi. Most of this is like classic sci-fi, so I'd be interested in reading some of the classic sci-fi. I have read Lieutenant of Darkness. I've never read Contact. That might be interesting. And try to get the titles in here. Can't really see this, but this is The Time Machine, but I've already read that. And most of this is Dune. My husband's a big Dune fan. I've read the first one. I might one day read like number 2 and 3 maybe, but I know after a while Frank Herbert's son took over, and according to my husband, like, they're not as good, so I'll probably just read maybe the next couple. On the next shelf we have some dystopian and apocalyptic fiction. That's one of my favorite genres. So I've read almost all of these. I've only read the first Hunger Games, and I haven't read Greenwood yet, but I think I've read all of these other ones. I haven't read Island by Aldous Huxley, actually. Then we have some horror novels. I've read all of those, and we also have some thrillers, and I don't think I've read any of the thrillers. I have not read Perfect Nanny. I have not read I Let You Go. On to my other bookshelf, I have some comics and graphic novels here. The Adventure Zone. And you can't really read these very well, but I've read all of these except for the Adventure Zone and the Sandman comics. I've read all of these, I think, except for the Electric State. I have not read that. Over on this side, we have like fantastical, fantasy, magical type books. Wicked is something that I really want to read. Got a couple of Neil Gaiman books in there. The next shelf is fantasy, but I think I've read almost all of these. I definitely have read all of those. Discworld, I mentioned I want to continue reading. I've only read the first 3, but we have several others. I have not read the 5th season. Then my Tolkien shelf. So here are all of the History of Middle-earth books that I've read none of. And the last 2 shelves are middle grade. So I've read all of these, so really I don't think there's much. I have not read A Little Princess or Heidi or Little Women. This is brand new, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers. I have not read that. And the last shelf of middle grade, I've read quite a few of these, but there are a few I have not. So I'll just do a quick pan of these last books. So everyone, please comment what you think I should read. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.